Dr. Elena Vasquez floated through the observation deck of the research station, watching the swirling clouds of Velcara Prime spin below. The massive gas giant painted everything in shades of orange and purple light. She had been studying the strange creatures that lived in those clouds for 3 years now. The work was peaceful and important. The station called Harmony's Light was home to beings from 12 different worlds. Elena shared her workspace with Kira, one of the whisper folk whose thin gray body moved like smoke in the low-gravity sections. There was also Resonant Prime Harmony, a tall crystal being who spoke in musical tones that made the walls vibrate. In the gardens, 3 Verdani tended to the plants they needed for food, their green skin soaking up the artificial sunlight. Elena checked the daily reports on her tablet. The atmospheric readings were normal. The research samples were growing. Well, in the lab, everything was exactly as it should be on a quiet Tuesday morning in the outer systems. That peace ended when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the station as Elena rushed to the command center. The other researchers were already there, their different voices mixing in panic. Kira's whispered words blended with Harmony's musical tones and the clicking sounds of the insect-like Chitara crew members. "What is happening?" Elena asked as she reached the main display. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station commander, pointed at the screen with a shaking hand. Long-range sensors picked up multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Big ones. They're heading straight for us. Elena stared at the display. 12 massive ships moved in formation toward their small research station. The computer identified them as Scaleth Empire vessels. Elena had heard stories about the Scaleth. They were conquerors who took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. "How long until they reach us?" Elena asked. 4 hours, Webb replied. "Maybe less if they increase speed." The Scaleth Empire was known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. Their gray-skinned warriors conquered peaceful worlds and enslaved entire populations. They had no interest in science or cooperation. They only understood power and fear. Elena looked around the command center at her friends and colleagues. None of them were fighters. The whisper folk could barely lift their own weight in normal gravity. The Resonants were peaceful beings who solved problems through harmony and discussion. The Verdani had never seen war in their entire species' history. "We need to send a distress signal," Elena said. "The Galactic Cooperative will help us." Webb nodded and moved to the communications station. His fingers worked quickly across the controls as he activated the emergency beacon. The signal would travel faster than light to the nearest cooperative fleet. Help would come. It always did when peaceful beings called for aid. "Message sent," Webb announced. "The nearest cooperative fleet is in the Andara system. They should receive our signal in 20 minutes. Elena felt some relief. The Galactic Cooperative had kept peace in this part of the galaxy for over 200 years. Their ships were staffed by diplomats and peacekeepers from dozens of worlds. They would negotiate with the Scaleth. They would offer trade agreements or resources in exchange for leaving the research station alone. 3 hours passed slowly. The research team watched the Scaleth fleet grow larger on their screens. The alien ships were massive and dark, built to look frightening. Weapon ports lined their hulls like angry eyes. Each ship was 10 times larger than their small research station. Then the Scaleth sent their message. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the lead Scaleth ship. A tall gray figure with 4 arms and glowing red eyes stared at them. His voice was deep and harsh when he spoke. "Small creatures of the research station, I am Commander Thex of the Scaleth Empire. You will prepare to surrender your vessel and all research data to us. You have 6 hours to comply." Elena stepped forward. "Commander Thex, we are peaceful researchers. We have no weapons or military value. We study atmospheric life forms for scientific purposes." Thex laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your atmospheric data can be used to create biological weapons. Your research station sits in a strategic position. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed." These are your only choices." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Webb checked the communications panel again. Still no response from the cooperative fleet. They should have received our signal by now. Elena felt cold fear growing in her chest. The cooperative had never failed to respond before. Their peacekeepers were probably already on their way, but would they arrive in time? The research team spent the next 2 hours preparing. They backed up their research data and sent copies to other stations. They recorded messages for their families. The Verdani gathered in their garden to sing their traditional songs of farewell. Harmony stood in the center of the station, filling the corridors with beautiful crystal music that helped calm everyone's fears. Elena found herself in her lab, looking at the samples she had collected from Velcara Prime's atmosphere. Tiny, floating creatures that glowed with their own light. They were completely harmless and beautiful. The idea that someone would use her research to create weapons made her feel sick. "Dr. Elena," Kira whispered as she floated into the lab, "the long-range sensors are detecting something new." Elena followed Kira back to the command center. Webb was staring at the sensor display with confusion on his face. "What is it?" Elena asked. "Multiple FTL signatures approaching our position," Webb said. "But they're not coming from the direction of the cooperative fleet. These are coming from the edge of unknown space." Elena looked at the energy patterns on the screen. She had seen hundreds of different ship signatures over the years. These were unlike anything in the computer databases. The energy readings were strange and powerful. "How many ships?" Elena asked. "5 contacts," Webb replied. "Much smaller than the Scaleth. Fleet, but moving very fast. They should arrive in about 30 minutes. Could they be more Scaleth ships?" Elena wondered. Webb shook his head. "No, the energy signatures are completely different. These are definitely not Scaleth vessels." Elena felt a small spark of hope. Maybe these were cooperative ships using new technology. Maybe they were traders or explorers who had heard their distress signal. Anyone would be better than facing the Scaleth alone. 20 minutes passed. The unknown ships grew closer. Their energy readings became more detailed on the sensors. Webb frowned as he studied the data. "These readings don't match any known species in our databases," Webb said. "The power output is enormous for ships of their size, and look at these weapon signatures." Elena looked at the screen. The unknown ships carried weapons unlike anything she had ever seen. Not the massive energy cannons favored by most galactic civilizations, but hundreds of smaller systems that seemed designed for precision rather than raw power. "Are they friendly?" Kira whispered. Before anyone could answer, the sensors detected the unknown ships dropping out of hyperspace. They appeared on the visual display as 5 dark shapes moving in perfect formation. They were sleek and predatory-looking, built for speed and maneuverability. Commander Thex's face appeared on the screen again. His red eyes were wide with surprise as he looked at his own sensor readings. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," Thex demanded. "You are interfering with Scaleth Empire operations." Elena held her breath as she waited for a response. The command center was completely silent, except for the gentle humming of Harmony's crystal body and the quiet whisper of the air recycling systems. Then a new voice came over the communications channel. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, but the accent was unlike anything Elena had ever heard. The voice was calm and controlled, but there was something dangerous underneath it. "Scaleth vessels, you are in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Rex Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, studying the strange transmission that had pulled his patrol fleet out of their routine mission. The message was clearly a distress signal, but the mathematical codes were unlike anything in Earth's databases. The universal constants were correct, which meant whoever sent this was definitely intelligent, but the source was completely unknown. Morrison was a veteran of the border wars, where human colonies had fought each other for resources and territory. His face carried scars from a plasma blast that had nearly killed him during the siege of New Marseille. He had seen enough war to last several lifetimes, but peace was a luxury that ship captains rarely enjoyed. "Lieutenant Torres, what do you make of this signal?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Maya Torres looked up from her console. She was young, but sharp, one of the best tactical minds to graduate from Luna Military Academy. Her dark eyes reflected the glow of the sensor displays as she worked through the data. "The math checks out, sir. Definitely an intelligence trying to communicate. But listen to this." Torres played a section of the transmission through the bridge speakers. "These energy signatures don't match anything we know about. The ship sending this distress call is using technology we've never seen before." Morrison nodded slowly. "What about the threat they're facing?" Torres brought up a tactical display showing the Scalith fleet. 12 large vessels, sir. The computer analysis suggests they're military ships, but their design is strange. Massive hulls, powerful engines, but their weapon systems are primitive by our standards." "Primitive how?" Morrison asked. "Single large energy weapons on each ship, sir. No point defense systems. No missile launchers, no kinetic weapons at all. It's like they're designed to fight opponents who can't fight back." Morrison had seen bullies before. In the border wars, some colonial militias had used overwhelming force against civilian targets while avoiding real military engagements. These Scalith ships looked exactly like that kind of coward's fleet. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Davis from his station, "I've been analyzing the language in the distress signal. The computer has worked out a basic translation matrix. They're calling themselves part of something called the Galactic Cooperative." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Never heard of them. What else?" "The signal mentions peaceful research and asks for help from nearby military forces. They seem to think we're part of some kind of galactic peacekeeping organization." Morrison almost smiled at that. Humans had been alone in space for 300 years, expanding slowly and carefully from system to system. They had always assumed they would eventually meet alien life. But this was not how anyone had imagined first contact would happen. "Sir," Torres interrupted, "I'm reading weapons fire. The hostile fleet is firing on the research station." Morrison's expression hardened. He had spent his career protecting human civilians from raiders and pirates. The idea that someone was threatening innocent researchers, even alien ones, brought back all his old instincts. "Battle stations," Morrison ordered. "Signal the fleet. We're going in." Alarms sounded throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. In the Marine Bay, Sergeant Jake Peterson checked his squad's equipment. Peterson was a big man with hands, scarred from years of close combat fighting. His Marines were all volunteers from Earth's roughest neighborhoods and military units. "Listen up," Peterson told his squad. "We don't know what we're facing out there, but innocent people are in trouble. That's all we need to know." Private Lisa Chang, the squad's demolitions expert, looked up from her weapon. "Sarge, what if these aliens are hostile to us too?" "Then, we deal with that when it happens," Peterson replied. "Right now, someone is calling for help, and we're the only ones close enough to answer." On the bridge, Torres was running combat simulations based on the Scalith fleet composition. The results surprised her. "Captain, you need to see this," Torres said. "I've been analyzing their tactical formations and weapon placements. These ships are built to intimidate, not to fight a real space battle." Morrison joined her at the tactical station. "Explain." "Look at their positioning, sir. They're arranged for maximum visual impact, not tactical advantage. Their weapons are massive but slow to recharge. They have no screening formations, no overlapping fire patterns, no reserve units. It's like they've never fought anyone who could shoot back." Morrison studied the display. In his experience, anyone who had survived real combat learned to be careful and smart. These Scalith ships looked powerful but sloppy. What's their response time to changing threats? Morrison asked. Based on their current maneuvers, at least 3 minutes to change formation. Their ships are too big and unwieldy for quick tactical adjustments, Morrison nodded. 3 minutes was an eternity in space combat. Human ships were designed to change position and targeting in seconds. Sir, we're approaching the system, Davis announced. Do you want to try communication first? Morrison thought about it. The traditional protocol would be to announce themselves and attempt negotiation, but the research station was under attack right now. Every minute spent talking was a minute those civilians were in danger. Negative. We go in weapons hot. If they want to talk, they can do it after they stop shooting at civilians. The 5 human ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Morrison had trained his captains well. They moved like wolves, fast and coordinated, each ship covering the others while maintaining optimal firing positions. The Scaleth. Response was immediate and predictable. Commander Thex, surprised by the sudden appearance of unknown ships, tried to assert dominance through intimidation. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves. You are interfering with Scaleth Empire operations. Morrison's voice was calm when he replied, but Torres could hear the steel underneath. Scaleth vessels, you are in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. On the main screen, they could see Thex's reaction. The alien commander's red eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with anger. You dare threaten the Scaleth Empire? Your 5 small ships against my fleet? I will crush you and add your wreckage to my collection. Thex cut the transmission, and immediately ordered his flagship to fire on the Retribution. The massive plasma cannon that had been terrorizing the research station swiveled toward Morrison's ship and fired. The energy blast that could have destroyed a small moon struck the Retribution's deflector shields and dispersed harmlessly into space. Morrison's ship didn't even shake from the impact. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background hum of the ship's system seemed to pause. Then Torres spoke quietly. Sir, their most powerful weapon just bounced off our standard deflector grid. Morrison nodded. I see that. What does that tell us about their other weapons? That we might be more advanced than we thought, sir. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Scaleth ships were huge and threatening, but they were also slow and primitive, like armored knights facing machine guns. All ships, weapons free, Morrison ordered. Target their weapon systems and engines. I want them disabled, not destroyed. Sir, Torres asked. If we're about to introduce humanity to galactic civilization, Lieutenant, I'd rather not do it by committing genocide. We disable their ability to fight, but we let them live to spread the word. Torres smiled grimly as she prepared the targeting solutions. Understood, sir. Teaching moment rather than massacre. Exactly. Now show them what human military engineering looks like. Sergeant Jake Peterson watched the tactical display in the Marine drop bay as the Scaleth weapons turned toward the research station. Around him, his squad checked their equipment one final time. The powered armor they wore was designed for the brutal realities of human warfare, tested in conflicts where mercy was a luxury that got good soldiers killed. Looks like these aliens just crossed a line, Peterson said to his Marines. Nobody threatens civilians on our watch. Private Chang loaded a fresh magazine into her assault rifle. Sarge, what's the plan if we have to board their ships? Peterson's scarred face showed no emotion. We follow standard breach protocol. Fast, loud, and extremely violent. These aliens obviously don't understand the difference between military targets and innocent people. Time to educate them. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Morrison felt something cold settle in his chest as he watched the Scaleth weapons pivot toward Harmony's light. In his years of military service, he had seen many types of enemies. Pirates, raiders, corrupt colonial militias. But threatening civilians was a line that changed everything. Lieutenant Torres, new targeting priorities, Morrison said quietly. Torres looked up from her tactical station. She had served under Morrison for 3 years and recognized the tone in his voice. The captain wasn't just angry, he was moving into the kind of cold fury that made human military officers truly dangerous. "Yes, sir? I want precision drone swarms prepped for immediate launch. Target every weapon system on every Scaleth ship simultaneously. I want their ability to threaten those civilians completely eliminated." Torres smiled grimly as she input the commands. "Drone swarms ready, sir. Shall I target their life support systems as well?" "Negative. We disable their weapons and engines, but we keep them alive. I want survivors to carry the message back to their empire." Morrison opened a channel to the other human ships. "All vessels, implement Protocol 7. Precision strikes only. No civilian casualties, but these aliens need to learn about consequences." The human fleet's response was swift and merciless. From the belly of each ship, dozens of small drones launched into space. They were no larger than human torsos, but each one carried exactly enough explosive power to disable a specific ship system without destroying the vessel entirely. Commander Thex watched his sensors as the swarm of small objects approached his fleet. His weapons officer tried to track them for point defense fire, but the drones moved in unpredictable patterns that made targeting impossible. "What are those things?" Thex demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're too small and fast for our targeting systems." "Wait. They're splitting up and heading for different ships." Each drone had been programmed with detailed schematics of Scaleth ship design, analyzed by the human tactical computers in the minutes since the battle began. They flew directly to their assigned targets with mechanical precision. The first wave struck the weapons systems. Thex felt his ship shudder as small explosions destroyed his remaining gun batteries. Similar detonations echoed across his other vessels as the humans systematically removed their ability to fight. But the humans weren't finished. The second wave of drones targeted communication arrays, sensor clusters, and navigation systems. Within minutes, the Scaleth fleet was blind, deaf, and helpless. Lieutenant Torres watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. "All Scaleth weapons systems destroyed, sir. They retain life support and basic maneuvering only." Morrison nodded. "Open a channel." On the research station, Elena and her colleagues watched in stunned silence as the mysterious human ships completely neutralized the Scaleth threat. The level of precision was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Every strike had been calculated to disable without destroying, to remove the threat while preserving life. "Dr. Elena," Harmony chimed in her crystal voice, "these beings fight with surgical precision. They could have destroyed the Scaleth fleet completely, but they chose not to." Elena realized Harmony was right. The humans had demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority, but they had also shown remarkable restraint. They were warriors, but not monsters. Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, addressing Commander Thex directly. "Commander, Thex, your threat against civilians has been noted and dealt with. Your weapons are destroyed. Your ships are disabled. You have 2 choices now. You can surrender peacefully and return to your empire with a message, or we can demonstrate additional capabilities that you really don't want to see." Thex stared at his ruined bridge in complete defeat. His proud fleet lay in pieces around him. These unknown aliens had systematically dismantled 300 years of Scaleth military doctrine in less than 10 minutes. What are you?" Thex asked. "We are humans," Morrison replied. "And we have just placed this system and its inhabitants under our protection. Any future aggression against these people will be met with escalation you cannot imagine." Elena felt a chill at those words. The captain's tone suggested that what they had just witnessed was only a small demonstration of human capabilities. Before Thex could respond, new alerts sounded on both the research station and the human ships. Long-range sensors had detected multiple FTL signatures approaching the system, big ones. Dr. Webb checked the readings twice before announcing what he saw. "Incoming fleet, 50-plus vessels. Energy signatures match Scaleth Empire technology, but these ships are much larger than what we just faced. Torres ran the sensor data through her tactical computers. Captain, these new ships are showing different weapon signatures, planet killers, ship-to-ship combat systems. This is a real military fleet, not raiders. Morrison studied the display. The approaching Scaleth force was clearly their response to the distress calls from Thex's disabled ships. Someone in the Scaleth Empire had decided to send overwhelming, forced to deal with the unknown threat. "How long until they arrive?" Morrison asked. 3 hours, sir, Torres replied. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were good people. Veterans who had signed up to protect human colonies from pirates and raiders. Now they were facing a decision that would affect the entire galaxy. "Sir," Communications Officer Davis spoke up, "I'm receiving a transmission from the incoming fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of a massive Scaleth battleship. The alien speaking was older than Thex, with scars covering his gray skin and medals indicating high rank. "I am Admiral Corks of the Scaleth Imperial Navy. Unknown vessels, you have attacked ships of the Scaleth Empire. This act of war will not be tolerated. You will surrender immediately or face annihilation." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing 50 enemy ships approaching. Any sane military commander would consider retreat. His 5 ships were outnumbered 10-1, but Elena and the other researchers were still on that station. The wild whisper folk, the Resonance, the Verdani, all the peaceful beings who had called for help. And now an entire Imperial fleet was coming to punish them for being rescued. Morrison made his decision. "Admiral Corks," Morrison replied, "you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal, or I will demonstrate why threatening civilians is a very bad idea when dealing with humans." On the research station, Elena watched the human ships take defensive positions around Harmony's light. 5 small vessels preparing to face an armada. "They're really going to fight," Elena whispered. 50 ships against 5. Kira floated beside her, the whisper folk's body trembling with fear and awe. Either they are insane, or they know something we don't. Elena looked at the approaching storm and realized that they were about to discover just how dangerous humans could be when someone threatened the people they had chosen to protect. Commander Thex stared at his tactical display in complete confusion. His most powerful plasma cannon, the weapon that had destroyed 3 planets during the conquest of the Rillan system, had struck the unknown ship directly. The energy blast should have vaporized the target and left nothing but glowing debris. Instead, the small ship continued moving in formation with its companions as if nothing had happened. "Weapons officer, report," Thex demanded. The young Scaleth officer's voice shook as he spoke. "Sir, sensors confirmed direct hit on target. The energy discharge was complete, but their ship shows no damage at all." Thex's forearms clenched into fists. In 300 years of conquest, no enemy had ever survived a direct hit from a Scaleth battle cannon. These unknown vessels were using technology that shouldn't exist. "Fire again. Full power. Target the same ship." "Sir, the cannon needs 4 minutes to recharge after a full power shot. 4 minutes. Thex realized that his massive weapons, designed to destroy planets and space stations, were too slow for ship-to-ship combat against fast-moving targets. The thought had never occurred to him before because no enemy had ever moved fast enough to matter. On the research station, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the scene unfold on the main display. The mysterious ships that had answered their distress call were smaller than the Scaleth vessels, but they moved with deadly grace. She could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, but these weren't the massive cannons she expected. "Webb, what kind of weapons are those?" Elena asked. Dr. Webb studied the sensor readings. "I don't understand these energy signatures. They look like kinetic systems, but the power output is enormous." Elena had never seen kinetic weapons in space combat. Every species in the Galactic Cooperative used energy-based systems. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive and inefficient for space warfare. The lead human ship transmitted again. The same calm voice that had warned the Scaleth now addressed them directly. Research Station Harmony's Light, this is Captain Morrison of the UES Retribution. Please move to a safe distance. We are about to engage the hostile fleet. Elena felt a strange mix of hope and terror. These unknown beings were here to help them, but the cold professionalism in the captain's voice suggested they were about to witness something unprecedented. All station personnel to emergency positions, Webb announced over the intercom. Prepare for combat! Captain Morrison watched his tactical display as the Scaleth ships tried to rotate their massive hulls to bring weapons to bear. Their movements were clumsy and predictable. Torres had been right about their response time. All ships, commence firing, Morrison ordered. What happened next changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about space combat. The human ships didn't fire single powerful blasts like every other military force in known space. Instead, they unleashed coordinated streams of kinetic projectiles. Hundreds of tungsten rounds accelerated to significant fractions of light speed poured from the human ship's railgun arrays. Each projectile was small, no larger than a human fist, but at relativistic speeds, they carried devastating kinetic energy. More importantly, the humans fired them in precisely calculated patterns designed to overwhelm defensive systems and target specific ship components. The lead Scaleth dreadnought, still recharging its main cannon, suddenly found itself under assault. From weapons it couldn't track or intercept. The projectiles struck its shields like a metal storm, each impact calculated to hit the same shield generators from multiple angles simultaneously. Commander Thex watched in horror as his flagship's defensive systems collapsed under the sustained barrage. Warning alarms screamed across his bridge as secondary explosions rippled through the ship's weapon systems. "Damage report!" Thex shouted. "Main cannon destroyed, sir. Forward shield generators offline. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. But the humans weren't finished. The second wave of projectiles targeted the ship's engines with surgical precision. Each round hit exactly where it would cause maximum damage to propulsion systems while avoiding life support areas. Within 90 seconds, the massive Scaleth dreadnought was drifting helplessly in space, its weapons destroyed and its engines dead. The other Scaleth ships tried to return fire, but their targeting systems couldn't lock onto the fast-moving human vessels. The aliens had designed their ships to fight enemies that stayed in one place, not opponents who moved like hunting predators. Lieutenant Torres coordinated the attack with cold efficiency. Her tactical computers had analyzed the Scaleth ship designs and identified every critical system. She assigned targets to each human ship and synchronized their fire to maximize damage while minimizing casualties. "Target the second dreadnought," Torres announced. "Focus fire on their weapon systems." The human ships moved in perfect coordination, each one taking a different angle of attack. Their combined firepower struck the second Scaleth ship like a precisely orchestrated symphony of destruction. Elena watched from the research station as the massive alien warships were systematically dismantled. The human ships were so much smaller, but they fought with a deadly intelligence that was terrifying to witness. "How are they doing this?" Elena whispered. Kira floated beside her, the Whisper Folk's thin body trembling with fear and awe. "They fight like apex predators," Kira whispered, "like hunters who have spent millions of years learning to kill." Dr. Webb was recording everything on the station's sensors. "Their tactical coordination is beyond anything I've ever seen. They're not just shooting randomly. Every shot is calculated for maximum effect." The third Scaleth ship tried a desperate maneuver, attempting to ram one of the human vessels. The alien dreadnought accelerated toward the UES Phantom, hoping to use its massive hull as a weapon. The human ship simply wasn't there when the Scaleth vessel arrived. It had calculated the attack vector seconds before the aliens committed to it and moved to a new position that gave it a perfect firing solution on the attacker's engines. Commander Thex finally understood what he was facing. These weren't the peaceful, negotiating species that the Scalith Empire usually conquered. These beings fought with a level of tactical sophistication that spoke of millions of years of warfare against equally intelligent opponents. "All ships fall back," Thex ordered. "Retreat to minimum safe distance." But retreat was no longer an option. The human ships had positioned themselves to cut off every escape route. The Scalith fleet was trapped in a perfectly executed tactical formation. Morrison's voice came over the communications channel again. "Commander Thex, your ships are disabled. Your weapons are destroyed. Surrender now and we will allow your crews to live." Thex looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was unconscious from the impacts. His ship's systems were failing one by one. In less than 5 minutes, these unknown aliens had reduced his mighty fleet to helpless wreckage. But Scalith pride would not allow surrender. Thex had one final card to play. "If you do not withdraw immediately," Thex transmitted, "I will order my remaining ships to target the research station. Your precious civilians will die!" The silence that followed was different from before. Elena could feel the change in the atmosphere. The humans had been professional and efficient in their attack on the military targets. Now there was something cold and angry in the air. Captain Morrison's response came in the same calm voice, but Elena could hear the steel underneath it. "Commander Thex, you have just made a very serious mistake." Admiral Corks stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive battleship Dominion's Fist, as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velcara system. He had commanded Scalith forces for 60 years, crushing rebellion after rebellion across a dozen sectors. No enemy had ever survived contact with an Imperial battle fleet. The sensor readings confused him immediately. His advance force under Commander Thex should have easily conquered one small research station. Instead, Corks found 12 disabled. Scalith ships drifting in space around the station, their hulls scarred but intact. The unknown enemy had defeated his forces without destroying them. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the unknown vessels are still in system. 5 ships much smaller than our forces. They appear to be protecting the research station." Corks studied the tactical display. 5 tiny ships against his fleet of 50 battleships, dreadnoughts, and assault carriers. Either these aliens were insane, or they possessed technology beyond anything in Scalith databases. "Open communications," Corks ordered. While the Scalith fleet prepared for battle, Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent the last 3 days learning about her mysterious rescuers. What she discovered both terrified and fascinated her. The beings who called themselves humans came from a world called Earth, and their history was a catalog of warfare that made Elena's blood run cold. They had spent their entire evolution fighting each other, their environment, and everything else on their hostile planet. "Kira, listen to this," Elena said to the Whisper folk as she read from her tablet. "Their planet has weather systems that can destroy cities. Predators that hunt in coordinated packs, natural disasters that would extinct most species, and the humans not only survived, they became the dominant species." Kira's thin body shivered. "No wonder they fight so well. Their entire world trained them for war." Elena continued reading. "They classify Earth as a class the death world. The computer says that's the highest danger rating possible. Most species wouldn't survive a single day there." Dr. Webb approached them with his own tablet. "Elena, you need to see their military history. They've been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. Wars between their own species, against their environment, against everything. They've developed tactical thinking that no other species has needed." Elena looked at the recordings of human battles throughout their history. The level of strategic complexity was staggering. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to send messages. They used psychological warfare, technological superiority, and raw determination in ways that peaceful species could never imagine. The captain was serious when he said this was just a demonstration, Elena realized. These 5 ships probably represent a tiny fraction of human military capability. Admiral Corks's transmission reached the human fleet right on schedule. Captain Morrison listened to the aliens' demands for surrender and felt the same cold anger that had driven him through the border wars. "Admiral Corks," Morrison replied, "you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal, or I will demonstrate why threatening civilians is a very bad idea when dealing with humans." Corks laughed, the sound echoing across the communication channel. 5. Ships against 50? You are either brave or foolish. I will give you one chance to surrender before I destroy you and everyone on that station. Morrison cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Gentlemen, we're about to make history. Not just human history, but galactic history. The question is what kind of history we want to make." Lieutenant Torres looked up from her tactical station. "Sir, I've been analyzing their fleet composition. Same problems as the advance force, but magnified. Big, slow, powerful ships designed to intimidate rather than fight a real battle." "What's our tactical assessment?" Morrison asked. "Honestly, sir, we could probably take them in a straight fight, but there's something else to consider." Torres brought up a new display. "These aren't just warships. Some of these vessels are troop transports, slave ships. I'm reading life signs from multiple species in their cargo holds." Morrison's expression darkened. The Scaleth weren't just conquerors, they were slavers. The ships approaching his position carried thousands of innocent beings destined for lives of servitude. "New objective," Morrison announced. "We don't just defeat this fleet. We liberate every slave ship in their formation." The human fleet began to move, and Admiral Corks got his first real look at how Deathworlders fought a space battle. The humans didn't charge forward in a glorious frontal assault like every other species in the galaxy. Instead, they used the system itself as a weapon. They accelerated toward Velcara Prime, using the massive gas giant's gravity well to slingshot kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds. Corks watched in horror as chunks of space debris accelerated, by gravity and human technology, began impacting his ships at significant fractions of light speed. His shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against projectiles moving at those velocities. "Return fire," Corks ordered. "All ships, target the enemy vessels." But the humans weren't where his targeting systems expected them to be. They had calculated orbital mechanics and fleet positioning with mathematical precision that spoke of a species that had been fighting in space for centuries, not decades. The Scaleth fleet found itself divided and confused as human ships appeared. From unexpected vectors, fired precisely targeted salvos, and disappeared back into the maze of debris orbiting the gas giant. Lieutenant Torres coordinated the assault with the same cold efficiency she had shown before, but on a much larger scale. Her tactical computers identified not just military targets, but the slave ships hidden in the Scaleth formation. "Captain, I've located 17 vessels with civilian life signs, marking them as priority rescue targets." Morrison nodded. "Tag them for the Marine squads. Peterson's boys are going to have some boarding actions today." Sergeant Peterson and his squad had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Their drop pods were loaded and ready to launch at targets of opportunity. Human boarding tactics, developed during the brutal close-quarters fighting of the border wars, were about to be tested against alien opponents. The first Scaleth battleship to fall victim to human precision was the destroyer Blood Harvest. A coordinated barrage of kinetic projectiles, each one targeted at specific system nodes, reduced the massive ship to a drifting hulk in under 60 seconds. Admiral Corks realized he was facing something unprecedented. These humans fought like no species in known space. They used physics as a weapon, mathematics as a tactical advantage, and pure aggression in ways that made his trained warriors look like children. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessel," Corks ordered. 20 Scaleth ships turned their massive weapons toward the UES Retribution. The combined firepower that followed would have vaporized a small moon. Morrison's ship wasn't there. When the energy blasts arrived, The humans had predicted the concentration of fire and moved to a position that gave them perfect firing solutions on all 20 attackers simultaneously. The return volley was devastating. Human weapons, designed for surgical precision rather than raw power, targeted the weapon systems and engines of every ship that had fired. Within minutes, a third of the Scaleth fleet was disabled and helpless. On the research station, Elena watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. The humans weren't just winning, they were rewriting the rules of space combat. Every assumption about military tactics that the galaxy had held for centuries was being systematically destroyed. They're not fighting to destroy, Elena realized. They're fighting to capture. They want those slave ships intact. Dr. Webb nodded as he watched the tactical display. Look at their targeting patterns. They're disabling military vessels while carefully avoiding damage to ships with civilian life signs. The level of precision required for that is beyond anything we thought possible. The first boarding action began when Peterson's drop pod slammed into the hull of a Scaleth slave ship. The Marines moved through the alien vessel like ghosts, their powered armor allowing them to operate in zero gravity and hostile environments. Peterson found the slave quarters and his heart hardened at what he saw. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, locked in cages barely large enough for their bodies. Some were barely alive after months or years of captivity. Control, this is Peterson. We've got civilians down here who need immediate medical attention. Some of these people have been here for a very long time. Morrison's voice came back over the comm. Copy that, Sergeant. Secure the ship and prepare for medical evacuation. We're sending corpsmen to your location. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Scaleth Empire had brought overwhelming force to crush 5 small ships, and instead found themselves completely outmatched by an enemy that fought with a level of tactical sophistication they couldn't comprehend. When the fighting ended, Admiral Corks found himself alone on the bridge of his crippled flagship. His fleet was scattered and broken, his weapons destroyed, his reputation in ruins. But he was alive, and that fact terrified him more than death would have. Morrison's transmission was calm and professional when it came. Admiral Corks, your fleet is defeated. Your slave ships have been liberated. Your military vessels are disabled but intact. You will return to your empire and deliver a message for us.
The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal towers of Thesara Prime. Ambassador Lyrian stood on her balcony, watching the peaceful city below. Her translucent blue skin caught the light as she sipped her morning tea. The Villani had lived in peace for over 3,000 years. Their advanced technology and diplomatic skills had kept war far from their beautiful world. Lyrian's communication device buzzed softly. She touched the glowing panel, expecting another routine trade negotiation. Instead, her assistant's panicked voice filled the air. Ambassador, you need to see this immediately. Our outer sensors have detected something terrible. Lyrian rushed to the command center. The massive viewing screen showed space around their solar system. Hundreds of dark shapes moved toward them like a swarm of deadly insects. The ships were unlike anything in their databases. They looked alive, with surfaces that pulsed and writhed like living tissue. Who are they? Lyrian asked. Her military advisor, General Kess, studied the readings with growing fear. We believe they are the Krogar Empire. We have heard whispers about them from distant worlds. They destroy everything they touch. The enemy fleet was massive. Each ship looked like it had been grown rather than built. Biomechanical weapons jutted from their hulls. As Lyrian watched, smaller scout ships broke away from the main force and accelerated toward the outer planets. How long until they reach us? She asked. 18 hours for the scouts. 3 days for the main fleet. Lyrian felt her heart sink. The Villani had powerful shields and energy weapons, but they were not warriors. They had spent centuries perfecting art, science, and diplomacy. Their military was small and designed only for defense against pirates and asteroids. The first attacks came sooner than expected. Krogar fighters swept through the outer system like a plague. They tore apart the mining stations and destroyed the early warning satellites. The Volani defense ships moved to intercept them, but the enemy was too strong. On the main screen, Lyrian watched in horror as a Volani cruiser fired its most powerful weapons at a Krogar fighter. The energy beams struck the bioship directly, burning through its hull. But instead of exploding, the ship's wounds began to heal. The living metal flowed like water, sealing the damage in seconds. "Their ships can repair themselves," General Kess whispered. "How do we fight something that cannot be killed?" The battle grew worse by the hour. More Krogar ships arrived, each one stranger and more deadly than the last. Some were as large as cities covered in weapons that fired streams of acid or bolts of pure energy. Others were small and fast, darting between the Volani defenders like angry wasps. By the end of the first day, half the Volani fleet was destroyed. The surviving ships retreated to the inner system, forming a desperate line around their home world. But everyone knew it would not be enough. Lyrian stood in the emergency council chamber, surrounded by the greatest minds of her people. Scientists, generals, and diplomats all spoke at once, offering plans that sounded more like prayers than strategies. "We could surrender," suggested one counselor. "Offer them our technology in exchange for our lives." General Kess shook his head. "The Krogar do not take prisoners. Our intelligence reports say they consume entire civilizations. They do not conquer worlds. They devour them." As if to prove his point, the main screen showed images from the outer planets. The Krogar had not simply destroyed the mining stations. They had somehow absorbed them, turning the metal and technology into part of their own ships. Even worse, they had taken the workers who could not escape. The bioships had literally eaten them, adding their knowledge and skills to the Krogar collective. "There must be something we can do," Lyrian said. "Our ancestors survived the plague wars and the Great Storm of 2847. We cannot be the generation that lets our people die." An old scientist named Dr. Vex spoke up from the back of the room. "There is one possibility. We could send a distress signal across all known frequencies. Ask for help from any civilization that might hear us." Many of the counselors laughed bitterly. "Who would risk their lives for strangers?" one asked. "Every species knows the Krogar cannot be defeated. We would only be asking others to share our fate." But Lyrian felt a spark of hope. What if we offered them something valuable in return? Our quantum communication technology, our medical knowledge, our star charts. Everything we have learned in 3 millennia of peace. The debate continued through the night as the Krogar fleet drew closer. By morning, the enemy had reached the 4th planet. The Volani watched helplessly as the beautiful ocean world of Seren was surrounded by bioships. Within hours, the planet's blue surface began to turn gray as the Krogar drained its life force. "They are not just taking our worlds," General Kess reported. "They are eating them, converting all the organic matter into fuel for their fleet." The main Krogar force finally arrived on the 3rd day. Their flagship was a monster beyond imagination. It looked like a giant jellyfish made of metal and flesh with tentacles that stretched for miles. Smaller ships swarmed around it like parasites. The final battle for Thesara Prime began at dawn. The Volani threw everything they had at the invaders. Their energy shields held for almost an hour before the first Krogar ships broke through. The bioships landed in the major cities like living meteors, immediately beginning to consume buildings and people. Lyrian watched from the command bunker as her beautiful world died around her. The crystal towers that had stood for thousands of years melted under Krogar acid weapons. The parks and gardens that had been the pride of her people were stripped bare by harvester machines. "We have perhaps 6 hours before they reach this bunker," General Kess reported. "The civilian shelters might last a day longer, but no more." Lyrian made her decision. "Prepare the emergency broadcast array. Send the distress signal on all frequencies, in every language we know." Dr. Vex looked up from his equipment. "Ambassador, the power required will drain our remaining shields. The bunker will be defenseless. Then we die trying to save our people rather than hiding like frightened children." The massive communication array rose from the bunker, broadcasting into the void of space. Lyrian spoke into the transmitter, her voice carrying across the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Lyrian of the Villani Republic. Our world is dying. The Krogar Empire has come to our system and we cannot stop them. We are a peaceful people who have never harmed anyone. Our children hide in shelters while our cities burn above them. We offer everything we have to anyone who can help us. Our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we do not have long." The signal raced through space at impossible speeds, carried by quantum transmitters that could reach across the galaxy in minutes. It passed dead worlds and empty space, star systems and nebulae, until finally it reached a small blue planet on the edge of civilized space. Dr. Elena Vasquez was finishing her night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. She had been listening to the cosmic radio waves for 12 years, hearing nothing but static and the occasional pulsar. She was about to go home when her equipment detected something new. The alien voice was beautiful and sad, speaking in a language her computers had never heard before, but the translation programs worked quickly, and within minutes Elena understood the desperate message. Her hands shook as she realized what she was hearing. This was not just any distress call. This was a dying civilization offering their most precious secrets to anyone who could save them. Elena stared at the alert button that would notify Terra Command. She knew that pressing it would change human history forever. Earth had never made contact with friendly aliens before. They had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now she knew they were not alone, and someone out there needed their help. Elena pressed the button. The alarm bells echoed through Terra Command headquarters in Geneva. President Julia Morrison rushed from her bed to the emergency briefing room, still in her sleeping clothes. Around the massive table sat Earth's most important military leaders and scientists. Admiral Marcus Webb stood at the front of the room, his weathered face grave. Behind him, a large screen showed star charts and alien text. "Madam President, 47 minutes ago we received a distress signal from outside our solar system. It appears to be from an alien civilization under attack." President Morrison sat down heavily. In all her years in politics, she had never imagined this moment would come. "Are we certain it's real?" Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her voice was steady. "I've been analyzing the signal for the past hour. The mathematics are too complex to fake. The language patterns are completely unlike anything human. This is genuine." On the screen, the alien message played again. Even through the translation, Ambassador Lyrian's desperation was clear. President Morrison listened to the entire plea, her heart growing heavy with each word. "How far away are they?" she asked. Admiral Webb consulted his notes. 47 light years, Madam President, in the Vega sector. Our fastest ships would take 8 months to reach them." 8 months? President Morrison stood up quickly. "They said they only have hours, maybe days at most." "That's assuming we use our current technology," Admiral Webb replied. "But we do have other options." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Earth's secret weapons projects had been classified above even presidential level until now. General Patricia Hayes spoke up from across the table. "Operation Deep Strike. The experimental ships we've been building in the Jupiter system. They could make the journey in 3 weeks." President Morrison felt a chill. She had been briefed about Deep Strike when she took office, but hoped she would never need to use it. "Those ships are untested. We don't even know if they work." "They work," Admiral Webb said quietly. "We've been running secret tests for 5 years. The quantum displacement drives can fold space-time itself. But there are risks." "What kind of risks?" Dr. Michael Torres, the lead scientist for Deep Strike, cleared his throat. "The drives could tear apart the ship's hull if not properly calibrated. The crew could be lost in a dimensional fold, or we could accidentally create a black hole." President Morrison rubbed her temples. "And you want to send these experimental ships to fight aliens we know nothing about?" Admiral Webb activated another display. "Madam President, we've been monitoring radio signals from that sector for the past hour. The enemy these Villani are fighting, They're not just attacking one world. We're detecting signs of destruction across 17 different star systems. The room went quiet again. Everyone stared at the screen showing dead or dying worlds scattered across space. "They're coming this way," Admiral Webb continued. "The attack pattern suggests they're moving through space systematically, destroying everything in their path. At their current speed, they'll reach human space in approximately 50 years. President Morrison felt the weight of the decision, settling on her shoulders. "So we can either fight them there or wait for them to come here." "That's correct, Madam President, but not everyone agreed with military action." Secretary of Defense Robert Kim stood up. "With respect, Admiral, we don't know that these attackers even know we exist. Why should we risk human lives for aliens we've never met?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Dr. Vasquez said firmly. Everyone turned to look at her. She had been quiet until now, but her voice carried conviction. "I've been listening to space for 12 years. I've heard nothing but emptiness and silence. Today I heard someone crying for help. We cannot ignore that." Secretary Kim shook his head. "Dr. Vasquez, your emotions are understandable, but we must think about Earth's safety first. Sending our most advanced ships to fight unknown aliens could expose our technology. What if they capture our vessels and learn about our location?" Admiral Webb pulled up another screen. "Sir, I believe they already know about us. Look at this." The display showed intercepted alien communications. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The Krogar Empire had detected the Volani distress signal. They knew someone had responded. They were already sending scout ships to investigate. "These Krogar are not just conquerors," Admiral Webb explained. "According to the intelligence we've gathered from the Volani broadcasts, they consume other civilizations. They add each species' knowledge and technology to their own collective. If they learn about Earth, they will come for us eventually." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to send only a small reconnaissance force. Others suggested trying to negotiate with the Krogar. A few even proposed abandoning Earth and fleeing to distant colonies. Captain Jake Rodriguez had been silent throughout the meeting. He was young for a fleet commander, only 35, but he had proven himself in the recent Mars conflicts. Finally, he spoke up. "Madam President, I volunteer to lead the mission." Everyone looked at him. Admiral Webb frowned. "Captain, you don't understand the risks involved." "I understand perfectly, sir. We have aliens asking for help. We have experimental ships that might save them. And we have an enemy that will eventually come for us anyway. The choice is simple." President Morrison studied the young captain's face. "It's not simple, Captain Rodriguez. If we send the fleet and fail, Earth loses its best ships and crews. If we send them and succeed but reveal our capabilities, we might make ourselves a target. If we do nothing, innocent people die, and we learn nothing about our future enemies." Dr. Torres spoke up again. "Madam President, there is one more factor to consider. The Volani have offered to share their technology with whoever helps them. Their quantum communication systems alone could advance human science by centuries." Secretary Kim laughed bitterly. "If there are any Volani left to share anything, and if our ships can even reach them in time." Admiral Webb stepped forward. "Madam President, I recommend we authorize Operation Savior, a full battle fleet using the deep strike ships. 200 vessels, 50,000 personnel. We go in force or not at all." 200 ships? Secretary Kim stood up angrily. "That's half our deep space fleet. If something goes wrong, Earth will be defenseless." "Earth will be defenseless anyway if we let these Krogar grow stronger," Admiral Webb replied. "Every world they consume makes them more powerful. Better to fight them now while we still have a chance." President Morrison walked to the window overlooking Lake Geneva. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere out there, across impossible distances, aliens were dying while their children hid in shelters. She thought about her own daughter, safe in her bed in the presidential residence. What kind of world would she inherit? One where humanity hid in fear, or one where they stood up for what was right? "The vote will be by secret ballot," she announced. "All in favor of Operation Savior, mark yes. All opposed, mark no." The council members wrote their votes and handed them to Dr. Vasquez. She counted them twice, then looked up with surprise. The vote is unanimous, Madam President. Operation Savior is approved. Admiral Webb nodded grimly. I'll begin mobilizing the fleet immediately. We can launch within 72 hours. But as the meeting broke up, alarms began sounding throughout the building. An aide rushed in with a message for Admiral Webb. His face went pale as he read it. What is it? President Morrison asked. Long-range sensors have detected incoming ships, Madam President. Small craft moving at high speed toward our solar system. They appear to be Krogar scouts. The room went silent. Secretary Kim was the first to speak. How long until they arrive? 6 days, sir. President Morrison felt the world shift around her. The decision had been taken out of her hands. They were no longer debating whether to fight, but where to make their stand. Admiral Webb, you have authorization for immediate launch. Whatever. Ships are ready, send them now. The rest will follow as soon as possible. Admiral Webb saluted. Yes, Madam President. Operation Savior is now active. As he left the room to coordinate the massive deployment, President Morrison remained at the window. The peaceful morning suddenly felt like the last moment of innocence Earth would ever know. Captain Rodriguez paused at the door. Madam President, what should I tell the crews about our mission? She turned to face him, her voice steady despite her fear. Tell them the truth, Captain. Tell them that someone asked for help and humanity answered. The Jupiter shipyards had never seen activity like this. Massive vessels that had been hidden in asteroid fields and behind gas giant moons suddenly came to life. Ships that officially did not exist began moving toward the assembly point near. Europa Station at Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching the fleet gather through the viewports. Each ship was a marvel of human engineering and desperation. The hulls gleamed with exotic metals found only in the deep asteroid fields. Strange energy patterns danced across their surfaces as the quantum displacement drives powered up. Captain Lisa Park approached him with a data pad. Her ship, the Prometheus, was the most experimental vessel in the fleet. Admiral, my engineering teams are reporting some concerns about the quantum field generators. We've never run them at combat levels for extended periods. Admiral Webb studied the technical readouts. The science was beyond his understanding, but the implications were clear. How long can they operate safely? Unknown, sir. The longest test we've done was 6 hours. This mission could take weeks. Through the communication system, other ship captains reported similar concerns. The quantum displacement technology was revolutionary but untested. It allowed ships to partially exist outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to target. But the energy requirements were enormous, and the side effects on human crews were still being studied. Lieutenant Tom Hayes was in the navigation center, plotting the course to the Villani system. The young officer had volunteered for the mission despite knowing the risks. His calculations showed they could reach Thesara Prime in 18 days if everything went perfectly. The quantum fold will take us through 7 different dimensional layers, he explained to Admiral Webb. Each transition puts stress on the ship's hull and the crew's nervous systems. Some people might experience hallucinations or memory loss. What's the alternative? Admiral Webb asked. 8 months using conventional drives, sir. By then, there won't be anyone left to save. In the weapons bay, engineer Raj Patel was making final modifications to humanity's most destructive devices. The ships carried nuclear warheads, particle beam cannons, and experimental plasma weapons. But looking at the intelligence reports about Krogar bioships, he wondered if any of it would be enough. Their hulls can regenerate damage, he muttered to his assistant. How do you kill something that heals itself faster than you can hurt it? His assistant, a young woman named Amy Chen, looked up from her work. Maybe we don't try to kill them. Slowly. Maybe we hit them so hard they can't recover. Raj nodded thoughtfully. Overwhelming force. Concentrate all firepower on single targets until they're completely destroyed. Across the fleet, 50,000 men and women prepared for humanity's first interstellar war. They came from every nation on Earth, united by a single purpose. In the mess halls, soldiers shared pictures of their families. In the engineering sections, technicians ran final diagnostics on systems that had never been tested in combat. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been assigned to the flagship as alien contact specialist. She spent her time analyzing every piece of information about the Volani and their attackers. The more she learned about the Krogar Empire, the more frightened she became. They don't just conquer civilizations, she reported to Admiral Webb. They absorb them. Every species they encounter becomes part of their collective knowledge. They've been doing this for thousands of years. How many species have they destroyed? Admiral Webb asked. According to the Volani records, at least 400, maybe more. The number was staggering. 400 entire civilizations wiped out, their knowledge and technology added to the Krogar war machine. Admiral Webb realized that humanity was not just fighting for the Volani, but for every species the Krogar might encounter in the future. On the observation deck, Captain Rodriguez stood with some of his crew, looking out at the gathering fleet. His destroyer Defiance was one of the smaller ships, but he was proud of his crew. They had trained together for 3 years, preparing for missions they never imagined would be real. "Captain, do you think we can win?" asked Ensign Maria Santos. Rodriguez considered the question carefully. "I don't know if we can win, but I know we have to try." In the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Williams prepared for casualties that might be unlike anything human doctors had ever seen. The Krogar used biological weapons that could dissolve metal and flesh alike. She had developed new treatments based on the limited information from Volani medical records. "We have no idea how human biology will react to Krogar toxins," she told her staff. "We'll have to learn as we go." The final launch preparations took place in a frenzy of activity. Supplies were loaded, weapons were tested, and families said goodbye to their loved ones. Many of the crew members knew they might never see Earth again. President Morrison arrived at Jupiter Station to see them off. She moved through the ships, speaking with the crew and trying to project confidence she did not feel. These brave men and women were risking everything for aliens they had never met. In the communication center, the latest messages from Thesara Prime painted a grim picture. The Volani were down to their last few defensive positions. Their beautiful cities had been reduced to rubble and metal slag. Ambassador Lyrian's voice was growing weaker with each transmission. "We estimate 3 more days before the main shelters are compromised," her latest message said. "Our children ask us when help will come. We tell them soon, but we no longer know if that is true." Admiral Webb gathered his senior officers for a final briefing. The holographic display showed the Thesara system and the massive Krogar fleet surrounding it. "Intelligence estimates over 3,000 enemy vessels," he said. "Their smallest ships are the size of our cruisers. Their largest are beyond classification." Captain Park studied the tactical display. "Admiral, what if we're wrong about our technology? What if the quantum displacement doesn't work against their weapons? Then we die fighting," Admiral Webb replied simply. "But at least we'll take some of them with us." The fleet launched at 800 hours Greenwich Mean Time. 200 ships disappeared into quantum fold space, leaving only energy distortions to mark their passage. On Earth, families gathered around television screens to watch the historic departure. The journey through folded space was unlike anything the crew had experienced. Reality bent and twisted around the ships. Stars appeared as streaks of light, and time seemed to flow at different rates in different parts of the vessel. Some crew members reported seeing things that could not be there. Phantom images of Earth, memories that seemed to play out in the corridors, voices of people who were light years away. The ship's doctors worked around the clock to keep everyone functional. "It's like the quantum field is connecting us to places and times that shouldn't exist," Dr. Williams reported. "The human brain isn't designed for this kind of travel." But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that innocent people were dying while they raced through the void. Each day brought new reports from Thesara Prime. The situation grew more desperate with each passing hour. On the 10th day of their journey, Lieutenant Hayes detected something troubling in the quantum field readings. "Admiral, I'm showing massive spatial distortions ahead of us. Something large is moving through this region of space." Admiral Webb joined him at the navigation console. The displays showed energy patterns unlike anything in their databases. Could it be natural phenomena? A black hole or neutron star? Negative, sir. These readings are consistent with artificial drives, very large artificial drives. The implication hit everyone at the same time. They were not alone in this region of space. Something else was moving through the quantum fold, heading in the same direction they were. Captain Park's voice came over the communication system from the Prometheus. Admiral, my sensors are detecting metal and organic compounds in the distortions. Whatever's out there, it's partially alive. Admiral Webb felt ice in his veins. Krogar ships. They're using some kind of biological space-folding technology. The fleet continued through the twisted reality of folded space, knowing now that they were racing not just against time, but against an enemy that might reach the battlefield before them. The Krogar had been fighting interstellar wars for millennia. Humanity had been in space for barely a century. As they prepared to drop back into normal space near Thesara Prime, Admiral Webb addressed the entire fleet over the communication system. In a few hours, we will arrive at our destination. We will face an enemy that has destroyed hundreds of civilizations. They will be stronger than us, more experienced than us, and they will outnumber us by more than 10 to 1. He paused, looking out at the stars that had become streaks of light around them. But they have never faced humanity before. They don't know that we come from a world where everything tries to kill us. They don't know that we fight hardest when we're protecting others. They don't know that we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. The fleet burst out of quantum fold space at the edge of the Thesara system. Immediately, every sensor screen lit up with contacts. The Krogar fleet was even larger than intelligence had estimated. Admiral Webb stared at the tactical display showing thousands of enemy ships surrounding the dying world. All ships, this is Admiral Webb. Today we make first contact with a hostile alien empire. Let's make sure they remember it. But even as he gave the order to advance, the sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. The main Krogar fleet was turning toward them, abandoning their attack on the planet. They had been waiting. The human fleet dropped out of quantum space to find hell waiting for them. Thesara Prime hung in space like a dying ember, its once blue surface now covered in gray scars where the Krogar had drained the life from entire continents. Around the planet, thousands of bioships moved in patterns that hurt to look at. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the Retribution, trying to process what his sensors were telling him. How many ships are we looking at, Lieutenant Hayes? The young navigation officer's voice was steady despite his fear. 3,600 confirmed contacts, sir, possibly more hiding in the planet's shadow. Captain Park's voice crackled over the communication system from the Prometheus. Admiral, I'm reading biomechanical signatures on every enemy vessel. These ships are partially alive. War General Thex watched the newcomers from the command chamber of his flagship. The alien vessels were smaller than his bioships, but they radiated energy patterns he had never seen before. His tactical computers tried to analyze their construction and failed. What species are they? He asked his intelligence officer. Unknown, War General. They do not match any civilization in our databases. Their ships appear to be purely mechanical, with no organic components. Thex studied the formation of the human fleet. They moved with precision and purpose, spreading out in attack patterns that showed tactical knowledge. They responded to the Villani distress call. Curious. Most species flee when they learn of our approach. On Thesara Prime, Ambassador Lyrian huddled in an underground shelter with the last survivors of her people. Children pressed close to their parents as the ground shook from Krogar mining operations above. When her communication officer detected the new ships, she felt a surge of desperate hope. The aliens who answered our call, she whispered. They actually came. But looking at the size of the human fleet compared to the Krogar armada, her hope dimmed. 200 ships against thousands. It would be a noble gesture, but it could not save her people. Admiral Webb opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is actual. We are badly outnumbered, but we knew that before we left home. These Krogar have never fought humans before. Let's show them what Deathworlders can do. The battle began when a group of Krogar scouts moved to intercept the human formation. The bioships accelerated with unnatural speed. their living hulls rippling as internal organs pumped energy to their weapons. Captain Rodriguez's destroyer, Defiance, was the first to engage. His ship's quantum displacement drive activated, phasing it partially out of normal space. The Krogar energy bolts passed harmlessly through the ghostly vessel. Target acquired, his weapons officer reported, firing plasma cannon. The concentrated beam struck the Krogar scout ship dead center. The bio-armor bubbled and burned but almost immediately began regenerating. Within seconds, the damage was completely healed. They can repair themselves faster than we can hurt them, Rodriguez reported to the fleet, switching to nuclear warheads. The missile struck the same scout ship and detonated. This time the explosion was too massive for the bioship to heal quickly, but instead of being destroyed, the vessel began absorbing debris from space, using the metal and organic matter to rebuild itself. War General Thex nodded with satisfaction. As expected. Their weapons are powerful but crude. Our ships will adapt and overcome. But he had not counted on human ingenuity. Captain Park on the Prometheus had been studying the enemy's regeneration patterns. All ships, this is Park. Concentrate. Your fire. Don't spread out your attacks. Hit one target with everything until it's completely vaporized. 5 human cruisers focused their weapons on a single Krogar fighter. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and nuclear missiles all struck the same target within seconds of each other. The bioship simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. It worked, someone shouted over the communication channel. Focus fire tactics are effective. But the Krogar adapted quickly. Their ships began moving in coordinated swarms, making it impossible to concentrate fire on individual targets. Worse, their weapons were more effective than expected. Krogar acid cannons ate through human armor like paper. The human ship Courage took a direct hit from a bioship's main weapon. The acid beam punched through the hull and began dissolving the internal structure. Captain Mitchell gave the order to abandon ship, but only half the crew made it to the escape pods before the vessel collapsed in on itself. Admiral Webb watched his fleet take casualties and knew they needed a new strategy. The quantum displacement drives were working, making human ships hard to target, but they couldn't stay phased indefinitely. The energy requirements were too high. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez called from her station. I'm detecting communication signals from the planet's surface. Ambassador Lyrian is trying to reach us. The Villani leader's image appeared on the main screen. Her blue skin was pale, and her large eyes showed exhaustion and fear, but her voice was steady. Human Admiral, we are grateful that you came, but you must know that direct assault will not work against the Krogar. We have been studying them for days. Their ships are not just alive. They are connected to each other through some kind of shared consciousness. What does that mean? Admiral, Webb asked. It means they learn from every attack. What hurts one ship, all ships will adapt to resist. But it also means they have a weakness. If you can disrupt their connection to each other, they become much less effective. Lieutenant Hayes looked up from his sensor readings. Admiral, I'm detecting massive bioelectric fields connecting all the Krogar ships. It's like a neural network spanning the entire fleet. Admiral Webb felt a spark of hope. Can we disrupt it? Possibly. If we could generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough, it might interfere with their communication. But creating such a pulse would require enormous energy, more than any single ship could generate. Admiral Webb looked at his tactical display, counting his remaining vessels. He had started with 200 ships. Now he had 163. The battle continued to rage around Thesara Prime. Human ships darted in and out of combat, using their phase technology to avoid the worst damage. But the Krogar were learning to predict their movements, and more ships were falling. Captain Rodriguez led a desperate attack on a cluster of Krogar bioships that were preparing to bombard the planet's surface. His destroyer materialized in the middle of their formation and launched every missile he had. 3 enemy vessels were destroyed, but his ship took heavy damage in return. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, his damage control officer reported. We're venting atmosphere. Seal the breaches and keep fighting, Rodriguez ordered. His ship limped away from the battle, trailing debris and frozen air. On the Prometheus, Captain Park was pushing her experimental systems to their limits. The quantum field generators were running at 120% capacity, far beyond safe parameters. Her engineering officer warned that they could fail at any moment. "How long can we maintain this power level?" she asked. "Maybe 10 minutes, before the generators burn out completely." Park made a decision that would change the course of the battle. "Prepare to transfer all power from life support and weapons to the quantum field array. We're going to create the biggest electromagnetic pulse in human history." Her crew stared at her in shock. "Captain, that will kill the ship, and probably us with it." "Better than letting those things reach Earth," Park replied. She opened a channel to Admiral Webb. "Sir, I have a plan to disrupt their neural network, but it's a one-way trip." Admiral Webb understood immediately. "Captain Park, I cannot order you to sacrifice your ship." "You're not ordering me, sir. I'm volunteering." As the Prometheus began channeling every ounce of energy into its quantum field generators, something unexpected happened. Other alien ships began appearing at the edge of the system. Not Krogar vessels, but sleek craft from a dozen different species. Dr. Vasquez studied the new arrivals with growing excitement. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from the incoming ships. They're from the Altarian Federation, the Centauri Republic, and at least 8 other civilizations." One of the alien captains appeared on the communication screen. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and 4 arms. "Human Admiral, I am Captain Zed of the Altarian Fleet. We have been monitoring your battle with great interest." "Are you here to help?" Admiral Webb asked. "We are here to observe. No species has ever stood against the Krogar Empire and survived. We wish to see how long you last." Admiral Webb felt anger rising in his chest. "People are dying down there. If you're not here to fight, then get out of our way." But Captain Zed's expression changed as he watched the human ships continue their desperate battle. "Your species fascinates us, Admiral. You travel across the galaxy to help strangers. You fight against impossible odds. You sacrifice yourselves for others. We have never seen such behavior." On the planet's surface, Ambassador Lyrian received word that more alien ships had arrived. She contacted them directly, pleading for assistance. But like the Altarians, they claimed they were only there to watch. "You don't understand," she told them. "These humans came here to die for us. They left their safe world and traveled farther than they had ever gone before, just because we asked for help. If that doesn't inspire you to action, then you are not the civilized species you claim to be." Her words were broadcast to all the watching alien fleets. Across dozens of ships, alien crews watched as human vessels threw themselves against the Krogar armada with suicidal courage. Captain Park's sacrifice was ready. The Prometheus had become a flying bomb, its quantum field generators overloaded to the breaking point. She aimed her ship at the center of the Krogar fleet, where their flagship coordinated the neural network. "This is Captain Park to all human vessels. I'm about to detonate our quantum field generators. The electromagnetic pulse should disrupt Krogar communications for several minutes. Use that time to hit them hard." But as she began her final approach, the Krogar flagship turned its most powerful weapons on her ship. Bioelectric cannons fired, streams of living lightning that tore through the Prometheus's hull. "Hull integrity failing," her engineering officer reported. "We're not going to make it to the target." That's when the impossible happened. An Altarian ship moved between the Prometheus and the Krogar flagship, taking the bioelectric barrage meant for the human vessel. "Captain Zed to human ship," came the alien's voice. "We will cover your approach. Your courage has shamed us into action." More alien ships joined the attack. The watching fleets had seen enough human sacrifice. They could no longer stand by while brave beings died for others. The Prometheus reached the heart of the Krogar fleet and detonated. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a ball of quantum fire that turned space itself inside out. The electromagnetic pulse raced across the entire Krogar armada, disrupting their neural network and leaving their bioships confused and directionless. "All ships attack now," Admiral Webb ordered. The human fleet, joined by their new alien allies, struck at the disoriented Krogar vessels. Without their coordination, the bioships were just individual monsters, dangerous but not invincible. Human nuclear weapons found their targets. Altarian plasma cannons burned through regenerating armor. Ships from a dozen different species worked together in perfect harmony. War General Thex watched his fleet fall apart around him. His neural network was restored, but the damage was done. Half his ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond quick repair. Worse, he was now facing a combined fleet of multiple species. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The galaxy fears us. No one stands against the Krogar Empire." His intelligence officer studied the sensor readings with confusion. "War General, it appears that our attack on these humans has inspired other species to join them. They are fighting together as if they were one fleet." For the first time in his long military career, War General Thex felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. His empire had conquered hundreds of worlds by dividing their enemies, making each species fight alone. But these humans had somehow united the galaxy against him. Admiral Webb opened a channel to the Krogar flagship. "This is Admiral Webb of the human fleet. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now and we will allow you to leave this system." Thex appeared. On the screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage. "The Krogar Empire does not surrender to lesser species. We will destroy you all." "Then you'll die with your ships," Admiral Webb replied calmly. "But your people don't have to. This war can end here." The final battle for Thesara Prime lasted 6 hours. The combined alien fleet methodically destroyed every Krogar vessel that refused to surrender. When it was over, the space around the planet was filled with debris and the hulks of bioships. War General Thex's flagship was the last to fall. Rather than surrender, he rammed his vessel into an asteroid, preferring death to defeat. But many of his subordinates chose differently. Dozens of Krogar ships surrendered, their crews asking for mercy. As the shooting stopped, Ambassador Lyrian emerged from her shelter to see human ships landing on her world. Soldiers in environmental suits began setting up field hospitals and distribution centers for food and medical supplies. Captain Rodriguez, his ship barely functional, managed to land near the capital city. He was met by Vellani survivors who touched his hands in wonder, amazed that beings from another world had risked everything to save them. "Why did you come?" Ambassador Lyrian asked him through a translator. "We are strangers to you." Rodriguez thought about the question for a moment. "Because you asked for help. And where I come from, when someone asks for help, we don't calculate the odds. We just ask how fast we can get there." But even as they celebrated victory, Admiral Webb knew this was just the beginning. The Krogar Empire was vast, spanning hundreds of star systems. They had won one battle, but the war for galactic freedom was just starting. The victory celebration was short-lived. As human medical teams worked to save Vellani survivors and alien engineers helped repair the damaged cities, long-range sensors detected something that made Admiral Webb's blood run cold. "Admiral," Lieutenant Hayes called from the sensor station, his voice tight with fear. "I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic core. Something big is coming." The main screen showed space-time distortions unlike anything they had seen before. Whatever was approaching was so large it bent reality around itself. The energy reading suggested a single vessel the size of a small moon. Dr. Vasquez studied the incoming data with growing horror. "Admiral, I'm intercepting Krogar emergency transmissions. They're calling this ship the Devourer. It belongs to their Emperor himself." War General Thex had been right about one thing. The Krogar Empire did not accept defeat easily. Word of the disaster at Thesara Prime had reached the Emperor's throne world within hours. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone had dared to stand against his forces and win. The Emperor was not like his subordinates, where they were merely vicious. He was ancient evil given form. His consciousness had absorbed the knowledge and hatred of every species the Krogar had ever destroyed. He had come personally to end this rebellion before it could spread. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his damaged destroyer, watching the approaching nightmare. His ship could barely maintain orbit, let alone fight, but he was not going to run. "All crew to battle stations," he ordered. "I know the ship is hurt, but we're not done fighting." Across the combined fleet, similar preparations were taking place. Human ships that had been held together with spare parts and determination readied their weapons. Alien vessels that had joined the battle prepared to face an enemy their species had feared for generations. The Devourer dropped out of hyperspace like a living mountain. Its hull was not metal or biomatter, but something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Weapons covered its surface like cancer growths, each one capable of destroying a battleship. But worse than its size or firepower was its hunger. The ship radiated a psychic field that fed on fear and despair. Several alien crews immediately lost consciousness as their minds were overwhelmed by the Emperor's presence. Emperor Kethvar himself appeared on the communication channels, his image causing static and interference on every screen. He had once been reptilian like the other Krogar, but centuries of consuming other species had changed him into something beyond classification. "I am disappointed." His voice echoed across space like thunder. "I expected the species that defeated my war general to be more impressive. You are merely primitives with crude weapons," Admiral Webb responded from the Retribution, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his mind. "We're the primitives who just destroyed your invasion fleet. If you want to join them, you're welcome to try." The Emperor's laughter was like the sound of dying worlds. "Your bravery amuses me, little mammal. I will preserve some of your species to serve as entertainment. The rest will become part of my collection." The battle began when the Devourer opened fire with weapons that defied understanding. Beams of pure entropy struck human ships, causing them to age rapidly and crumble into dust. Reality-warping missiles created pockets of twisted space-time that trapped vessels in dimensional loops. The human ship Valiant took a direct hit from one of the entropy beams. Captain Williams watched helplessly as her hull plating corroded and her crew aged decades in seconds. She managed to evacuate most of her people before the ship collapsed into metallic powder. "Conventional weapons are useless," she reported, as her crew transferred to other vessels. "That thing exists partially outside our dimension." But the humans were not alone. The alien species that had joined the fight brought their own advanced technologies. Altarian ships fired beams of coherent light that could punch through dimensional barriers. Centauri vessels launched quantum torpedoes that exploded in multiple realities simultaneously. Still, it was not enough. The Devourer shrugged off their attacks like raindrops. Worse, it was learning from each weapon used against it, adapting its defenses in real time. Lieutenant Hayes made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the Emperor's ship. It's not just one vessel. It's made from the absorbed remains of hundreds of conquered ships, all connected by the Emperor's consciousness." "What does that mean for us?" Admiral Webb asked. "It means if we can disrupt his consciousness, the whole ship might fall apart. But how do you attack the mind of a being that had absorbed the knowledge of 400 civilizations?" Dr. Vasquez thought she might have an answer. "The Villani mental techniques," she said suddenly. "Ambassador Lyrian, your people have telepathic abilities. Could you reach the Emperor's mind?" From the planet's surface, Ambassador Lyrian's voice carried new hope. "Perhaps, but I would need to be close to him, very close." A desperate plan began to form. Captain Rodriguez volunteered to carry Ambassador Lyrian to the Devourer in his damaged destroyer. The ship was already beyond repair, but it might survive long enough to get close to the Emperor's vessel. "This is suicide." Admiral Webb pointed out. "Maybe," Rodriguez agreed, "but it's our best chance." As the Defiance made its final approach to the Devourer, the rest of the fleet created a diversion. Every ship opened fire at once, not trying to damage the massive vessel but to keep its attention focused away from the small destroyer. The Emperor noticed the approaching ship but dismissed it as another futile gesture. "Do they think one small vessel can harm me? I have consumed stellar nations. I have devoured the dreams of entire species." But Ambassador Lyrian was already reaching out with her mind, using telepathic techniques perfected over millennia of peaceful contact. She touched the edge of the Emperor's consciousness and gasped at what she found. "He's not one being," she whispered to Rodriguez. "He's thousands of trapped souls, held together by rage and hunger. They're screaming to be free." "Can you free them?" Not alone. But if your people could help me. Rodriguez opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, Ambassador Lyrian needs our help. She's going to try something that's never been done before. I need everyone to think about why we came here. Think about the children hiding in shelters. Think about doing what's right even when it's hard. Across the fleet, 50,000 human minds focused on a single thought. Freedom. Not just for themselves, but for everyone. The focused mental energy of an entire species trained on war and hardened by a death world reached across space to touch Ambassador Lyrian's telepathic abilities. The combination was incredible. Lyrian's refined telepathic skills, amplified by human determination, pierced through the Emperor's defenses like a spear of pure thought. Inside the Emperor's mind, she found the trapped consciousness of hundreds of species. They had been prisoners. For centuries, their knowledge and memories used to fuel the Krogar Empire's expansion. But they had never stopped hoping for freedom. You are not alone, Lyrian told them. Help is here. The rebellion inside the Emperor's mind was swift and devastating. Centuries of suppressed rage and desire for freedom exploded outward as the trapped souls turned against their captor. The Emperor's scream of fury and pain echoed across multiple dimensions. The Devourer began to tear itself apart as the absorbed ships tried to break free from the Emperor's control. Hull plates that had been fused together for centuries separated violently. Weapon systems turned on each other as different parts of the ship fought for independence. All ships pull back, Admiral Webb ordered. That thing is coming apart. The explosion when the Devourer finally died was visible from 3 star systems away. The Emperor's death scream shattered windows on Thesara Prime and caused aurora displays in the atmospheres of gas giants. But more importantly, it sent a message across the galaxy that the Krogar Empire was not invincible. Rodriguez's destroyer was caught in the edge of the explosion, but they survived. As rescue ships arrived to pick up his crew, he found Ambassador Lyrian unconscious but alive. The telepathic effort had drained her completely, but she was smiling. "What did you see in there?" he asked when she woke up. "Freedom," she whispered. "I saw freedom." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. Species that had hidden from the Krogar for centuries began to emerge from their hiding places. The Emperor's death had shattered the psychic network that controlled the entire Krogar Empire, leaving their remaining fleets confused and leaderless. More importantly, word of humanity's actions spread throughout civilized space. A young species from a death world had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers, then united dozens of other species in the fight for freedom. Ambassador Lyrian stood in the rebuilt council chambers of Thesara Prime, addressing representatives from over 50 different civilizations. The Villani had offered their advanced technology as promised, but humanity had surprised everyone by asking for something else instead. "We don't want your technology," Admiral Webb had said. "We want your friendship. We want to build something together that's bigger than any one species." The Galactic Defense Alliance was formed 3 months after the Battle of Thesara Prime. Its charter was simple. When someone calls for help, we answer. No matter how far away they are, no matter how dangerous the mission, no matter what the odds. The Alliance's first act was to hunt down the remaining Krogar fleets and offer them a choice: surrender and join the galactic community, or face the combined might of dozens of species working together. Most chose surrender. Captain Rodriguez was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Alliance's first joint task force. His new flagship was built using technology from 12 different species, but its crew was entirely human. Other species had learned that when you needed someone to charge into impossible odds, humans were the ones to call. Dr. Vasquez became the Alliance's first director of xenological studies, working to catalog and preserve the knowledge of species that had been lost to the Krogar over the centuries. Many of the consciousness trapped in the Emperor's mind had survived his death and were helping to rebuild their civilizations. President Morrison received a transmission from Admiral Webb 6 months after the fleet's return to Earth. He was standing on the bridge of his new ship, with representatives from 24 species working alongside his human crew. "Madam President," he said, I wanted to report that our mission was successful. We saved the Villani, destroyed the Kroger Empire, and accidentally started a galactic revolution. Accidentally? She asked with a smile. Well, we just answered. A distress call. We had no idea it would lead to the formation of the largest military alliance in galactic history. President Morrison looked out her office window at the construction sites where alien embassies were being built. Ships from across the galaxy now visited Earth regularly, bringing trade, knowledge, and new friendships. Admiral, what's our next mission? Admiral Webb's smile was visible even across interstellar distances. Yesterday we received 17 different distress calls from the Outer Rim. Pirates, natural disasters, hostile first contacts, the usual problems. And we're already on our way, because that's what we do, Madam President. When someone calls for help, humanity answers. The transmission ended, leaving President Morrison alone with her thoughts. Outside her window, she could see children playing in the parks, unaware that their future was now secure because brave people had decided to do the right thing, no matter the cost. Humanity had gone to the stars to save strangers and had found something even more valuable, a galaxy full of friends who shared their values. They had learned that the universe was not as cold and empty as they had feared. It was full of people worth fighting for. And when the next distress call came in, they would be ready to answer it.